Hi, I'm Ben.
I'm Jenn.
So today we are going to talk about philosophical debates about privacy and why you care about that. Different suggestions have been made by people like James Rachels and Judith, Jarvis, Thomson, and then whatever people want to talk about. If you want to bring something up in the chat, but you want to kick us off with the anonymity stuff.
What anonymity stuff?
So
a lot of online anonymity leads to bad things. Is that what I was supposed to say?
was that all you had on that?
Basically, yeah.
Because remember we were talking about this
cyberbullying. That's bad, and we've all seen the celebrities reading mean tweets, things. People say mean things when they are under the cloak of anonymity that they would not say otherwise.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that was good.
I don't think I said anything that isn't commonly known.
Well, no, but you were suggesting that we start with that. I was like, well, I don't think I have anything to say about that, but if you do, go nuts.
Ben isn't technically at home. Well, we're at Ben's parents' house, so I guess we are at home, maybe.
Yeah.
We're like 2 hours from where we usually are.
Yeah, where we usually are, there's a different bookshelf and a different plant.
Yeah. This plant I think is dead. I don't think you've
dead.
You have not been watering your plant.
I watered it just the other day.
And by just the other day. Anyway. Yeah, but at least we're back together. So that's the best part.
So I'm thinking about why privacy is something that matters. You often hear when people make complaints in different contexts about privacy being violated or privacy rights, or why they don't like being spied on. In some contexts, you'll hear the response that,
"Why? You got something to hide?"
Exactly. So
you didn't have nothing to hide. You won't care.
Wow.
Brah.
Yeah, that. So but of course it does seem like we have some special interests, like Thomas Scanlon puts it, in being free from intrusion.
Even if we don't have anything to hide.
Exactly.
I have nothing to hide.
Ever? From anyone?
Not really.
Wow.
What am I going to hide?
Yeah, so Thomas Scanlon is the dude. If you've ever watched the Good Place, there's a book that comes up several times over the course of that series called What We Owe to Each Other.
Eleanor leaves a note in it.
Right, or she
leaves a note in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've watched it and you don't remember that book specifically coming up, that's where she leaves a note, which isn't even a spoiler. So
yeah.
There you go.
Tears off a page from it, I thought. And anyway, but yeah, whatever. Yes. So if we start to think about this, there's a paper by James Rachels called Why Privacy is Important. And at the beginning of it, he goes through a bunch of reasons that in certain situations, privacy might be important. So he talks about how, Bobby Fischer is preparing to play some internationally important game of chess against a Russian grandmaster or something. And he obviously has a reason to, it would disadvantage him to
have his strategy be out in the world.
Right, exactly. So, he has a reason to want to keep that private. And he also talks about medical records. There are obvious reasons we'd want to keep them private. And various situations in which somebody might use some piece of information about you in an unfair way, blackmail, things of, exciting things of that nature.
See, I don't have anything that anybody could blackmail me about. But that's his point. that I am pretty open about anything and everything, about my medical history, about pretty much anything. And I don't have any, there's no blackmail material. Sorry. None of y'all ladies can blackmail me into leaving Ben. Sorry. But I still think that privacy is a good thing, even though I don't have anything to hide. And why is that I think privacy is some sort of intrinsic good?
Yeah, that's the problem that Rachel's is trying to answer in this paper. And, you could even start to think a little bit harder about what it is that would count as something to hide. He gives the example of people being eavesdropped on while they're like, I think it's I don't remember who the author was, but he has a passage from some novel where someone's being eavesdropped on.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
They're doing, I think it was like by John Barth. Is that right? Anyway, but somebody's being eavesdropped on while they think they're alone at home, and they're doing like mildly embarrassing things.
The one person says, let's go eavesdrop, and the other person says, why? It's going to be boring. People are the same. Whether real people are the same all the time.
Yeah. But of course, this person is not totally the same as they would be in public. She thinks that this person is going to be just the same in public as he is in private, and they come to realize that is not, in fact, the case. Yeah.
And it's not like he's in there murdering small children or anything. He's just acting in a way that would be embarrassing if people saw him.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing the what's the Tom Cruise movie where he's
Risky Business?
Yeah, Risky Business, right? You're like, dancing in your underwear at home or something. It's not, you're not doing anything bad or objectionable, but you wouldn't be doing it if you thought anybody was watching.
Well, that depends. I'm sure some people would.
Sure.
And I mean, I do it if you were watching, and I dance all the time, even though you're watching.
But
sometimes because you're watching.
Fair enough. But like but there are people, if you thought they were watching, you wouldn't. And that, I mean, you don't even.
Maybe not in my underwear.
Yeah, well, I mean, you wouldn't even like do the chair dancing.
Chair dancing? What is chair dancing? This is what I always do at the beginning when the music's playing. I'm like, bow, 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 bow. See, I'm an open book.
So lots of people wouldn't, though, and that's that is something to hide in that sense, that you wouldn't if you knew people were watching, but not in the sense that it's anything like bad or or objectionable. I also always liked, I think Cory Doctorow has an essay somewhere where he's talking about this in the context of NSA spying and stuff, and he says there's nothing wrong with either going to the bathroom or being naked, but if, as a matter of national security, it was demanded that you only go to the bathroom in a glass tower naked, so nobody, you couldn't possibly hide anything, you'd legitimately object to that, which suggests that it's important to us that we have some kind of private sphere, and that's like a legitimate value to have.
But something that we might ask, I don't know, you may be planning to get to this later, but thanks, J. Andrew, I feel validated. It's a cultural thing. If that's how we had all grown up, that he does the same dance.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If we had all grown up going to the bathroom in a glass room in public, then we wouldn't feel like it was an invasion of our privacy if somebody saw us going to the bathroom. So what we consider private depends on a lot of factors.
Yeah, for sure. And so the question, if you think about a right to privacy, is why this matters at all. Like, even granted that like what is going to be considered part of a private sphere is going to vary from society to society and all that. like, why is having any sort of private sphere an important thing? And you might answer just by saying that, well, people do value it, so that they're going to be upset if it's violated. So that gives you some reason, all by itself, maybe, to value it. But Rachel's in this essay, that why privacy is important, tries to dig down at least one level and see if you can think, okay, what are some other values that are served by having a private sphere where we don't think that we're being that we can at least control the information.
And he talks about those things that Ben mentioned. The what were they? The situations where we might say, medical records and stuff
Bobby
like that.
Fischer
Bobby Fischer, yeah. And he says all of these things that I'm listing off here, they seem to imply these special, maybe one-off kind of circumstances. And he's like, okay, well, I can see why you would want privacy for this and privacy for this, but just in a life like that, like in a life like mine, like, I am pretty much an open book with people, but I still think there's a value to privacy. Why is that? Even if none of those extra special things are going on.
Yeah, and Rachel's gives the example. I think this paper was written in the 1970s, which you can kind of tell from some of his examples and some of the
1975.
Yeah, some of the phrases that he uses. Right, he refers to feminism as the women's liberation movement. That's very 1970s. But he gives the example of a married couple with a completely like vanilla, unexceptional sex life. Still wouldn't want to. They would still want to be able to do that in private. It's not about hiding anything.
Plenty of people leave the blinds open though, and the curtains open. Like it's not embarrassing. Like some people judge you if you're not married or whatever. But if you're married and no one could possibly object to what you're doing.
He would still, but he is assuming for the sake of the example that most, a lot of people certainly would still want that to be private. They'd be very upset if anybody was spying on them, during that situation, even though, again, it's certainly not, it doesn't tick any of the boxes for these exceptional circumstances where you've got some clear interest that's being served by it, like the Bobby Fischer thing or the medical records or anything like that. You're not going to be blackmailed in any way.
I had sex with my husband.
Right, exactly. So that's not gonna be it. Actually, that's a good point, right? So those are very important Supreme Court cases that were in both birth control for Griswold and Roe, abortion for Roe, that in both cases, the Supreme Court rulings reference privacy rights. So that might have been part of the context to why Rachel's was thinking about this, or some of the other philosophers who's responding to were thinking about it.
Also, I want to see J. Andrew dance with the K-pop hair. That's what I want. Did you notice he said at the beginning he woke up with K-pop hair?
I did say that, yeah. So
Ben does karaoke. He's terrible, but he does it.
That's true. Go.
So his singing isn't even private.
Go to a bar that has karaoke with me, and I might do it.
You will do it.
Not always, but often.
Or if you look at my Facebook page, you can find videos.
Yep, that's also true. So it seems like it's not just that we value privacy because there's some other interest that we have in particular situations that's served by it, that we're going to be disadvantaged because the rival grandmaster is going to learn our chess strategy, or we're going to be blackmailed, or any of these things, or even that we're going to be seen doing things that are embarrassed, like not illegitimate, but like weird and embarrassing, like the quote from the novel, where I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it's like somehow they were like
doing military maneuvers and
yeah. So it's like weird. It's not bad, but it's weird and embarrassing. But even things that wouldn't be weird and embarrassing, because everybody would assume, right, that you do them, that certainly aren't going to open you up to blackmail, that aren't going to lead to you being losing your job or anything like this. We still think that's important. And the account that Rachel's gives of why it's important does kind of tie in a little bit to what Jenn was talking about the sort of dangers of internet anonymity, that you might think that when people can so we often, in fact, actually, if you think about intrusion and privacy, might often think about like doxing, like if somebody has a Twitter handle that's not their name, and somebody else like digs up and announces who it is, that's a big deal. You're not at least in terms of informal social norms, you're not supposed to do that. So that's some kind of expectation of privacy. And you can say, well, on the one hand, that has all those bad consequences Jenn was listing off, that people will. I mean, this is something I think like back in like the 90s, I feel like this was something that there was a lot of hand wringing about, that people would treat each other terribly online.
Yeah, people do.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't wrong, but because it's anonymous, that people would be able to do that. Although I would question how much using your real name actually seems to deter that in practice. But yeah. So, but even thinking about that example, like posting under a fake name or something, so you could remain anonymous, or a handle that's obviously not pretending to be your name and nobody knows who you actually are. You're some mysterious figure like Alice from Queens on Twitter. Then if it's okay to do that, if you think, for example, that you shouldn't just be required to post under your name, presumably that has something to do with why you think that privacy is valuable, and Rachel's has an account of that, right? So something that's still instrumental. So in other words, it's not supposed to be, privacy is intrinsically valuable. It's just valuable in itself, but here's a general good that's served by privacy, but it's not like a really rare thing like those examples that you started with. It's like a good that would come up in people's lives in a totally normal, banal, routine way. All right, I've been talking for a while. You want
to? I mean, So he talks about how we all have different types of relationships. I have my relationship with Ben, relationship with my friends, with my mother, with my colleagues. Well, one of whom is Ryan Lake. I have a different relationship with him than with other colleagues, and how we all act differently. I would say things to Ben that I wouldn't say to, this other person. And it differs, what I am willing to tell, what I am willing to share with people differs according to the relationship that I have with them. So I would be willing to tell Ben certain things that I might not just be willing to say right here. And that's a good thing because it keeps these relationships delineated. So I'm able to have the kind of relationship with Ben because we have this kind of privacy. If our lives were entirely lived in front of this camera,
right,
we wouldn't be able to have the same type of relationship that we do. We would have two options. We would either have to change the kind of relationship that we have, or we would just have to do things that are generally considered inappropriate to do in public.
And he talks.
I know what I would choose.
He talks about how there are, like, sometimes when you think about somebody who acts differently in different circumstances, that they act one way at work, they act one way, with their old friends.
He mentions that a man might curse in front of his friends, but not curse in front of his mother-in-law.
Right.
We certainly do not curse in front of our mothers-in-law.
Yeah. So, and he says that this is, well, it wouldn't be a big deal if you cursed in front of your mother-in-law. That's
true. His mother-in-law would clutch her pearls and need some smelling salts. But yeah, it would be a different kind of thing.
Yeah. Your mother-in-law does herself a lot, but in any case, so we play different roles in different contexts. That there are things that somebody would say in front of his friends from way back that he wouldn't say with people he just met, and he wouldn't say to his mother-in-law or at work. And he says that sometimes when people think about this, they'll think that this is like bad or dishonest, like that quote from the novel about, being, if you're a good person, you'll be the same way all the time. You don't have any masks.
Yeah. So the idea would be that I'm my real self with Ben, and then when I'm talking to my mother-in-law, that I'm putting on some sort of mask to talk to her, and then to talk to my boss, I'm putting on this other mask, but I'm real Jenn when I'm with Ben. And he says, well, why does that have to be true? Why can't they all just be different facets of me? And it's not that I'm only real in one particular situation. Why aren't all those things real? I'm the kind of person who speaks to person X in such and such a way. And I'm the kind of person who tells person Y these sorts of things, and that they can just all be parts of myself.
Yeah, it says that none of them have a better claim than any of the others to be the real you. It's that there's none of them are privileged in that way. It's all just that they're all they could all be equally real. And in fact, he says not only is there nothing wrong with that, but it's valuable to have different kinds of relationships in your life.
Yeah, that's how it should be
with different people, and that in fact oftentimes your acting that way is part of what constitutes that relationship. Mm-hmm. That so he gives the example that if he found out that somebody he thought of as a close friend told things to their other friends that they didn't tell to him,
and that he wrote poetry but he was kind of embarrassed about it, and he showed his poetry to other people but he didn't show it to him,
etc., then he would think, oh, I guess we aren't really as close as I thought we were. Because how you act towards people, what kind of information you share with them, what side of you they get to see, is part of what constitutes your relationship of that type with that person, and that being in a position to control what sort of information different people have about you, what they see of you, is essential to being able to have those relationships. So he thinks it's instrumentally valuable, in other words, it's valuable because of this other thing, but the other thing doesn't have to be some special one-off, like unusual situation. The other thing can just be all of our normal everyday interest in maintaining different kinds of relationships with different kinds of people.
Yeah. And I think what you said, different sides of yourself, which that also implies that you're not putting on a mask or whatever. You have many facets, and you show this one to this person and this one to this person, or that, they see different ones, but they're all part of the jewel that is you.
Right. So
I would never talk that way in real life. Yeah,
see, there you go. And as part of like considering how this account of what makes privacy valuable might be different from some other ones, he contrasts it to Judith Jarvis Thomson, who he quotes some comments by Thomson, which suggest that they're a little unclear, at least to me.
Me too.
Okay. But
I figured you had it covered, so I was like, is it really that clear? But sorry, Ben's got it.
Which is funny because I mean, Judith Jarvis Thomson is normally
a very clear
writer.
Maybe she realized that what she was saying was bunk, and or maybe it's just that it is bunk, and so there's really no clear way to express it.
Sure. It's like the Nietzsche line in The Gay Science about how those who know they are profound strive to be clear. Those who wish to seem profound strive to be obscure.
Or this week when Matt LaFleur was asked about the Aaron Rodgers situation, and just some word salad spewed forth, and Jordan Love were two of those words, and he didn't really say anything coherent.
Yeah, or like the sort of White House press secretary thing you see sometimes where, you know, like I remember like a month ago or something, somebody asked Psaki about Biden's policy toward Cuba, and it was just this like paragraph of text that's like, okay, you know, well, you know, we are always continuing to look at, we are, you know, engagement, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I know all those words, but I don't think that added up to a thought.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Jordan Love, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And at the end, you're just like, what did this man say? Well, really nothing.
So it's possible that despite being, again, a very good writer and in many contexts a very clear thinker, it's possible that Judith Jarvis Thomson had like half a thought here that didn't quite work, or it's possible that she puts it more clearly elsewhere. But in any case, she had this quote where she seems to suggest that privacy rights have something to do with property rights, or are the same kind of rights as property rights, or partially overlap with property rights, or something like that. And
I believe she said partly overlap.
Yeah, no, she did say that, but there are a lot of words that we're leaving out here because it was kind of a jumble. But that, you know, for the sake of simplicity, we'll assume that this is a cluster of rights that partially overlaps
with another cluster of rights, and that in itself forms a cluster of rights.
Yeah, which is very informative. Yeah, I really like Judith Jarvis Thomson. This might not have been her best moment, but
check out his obituary for Judith Jarvis Thomson, not like his. But anyway,
have you already written your obituary? Yeah. So, which is, I mean, actually in the obituary, I think I quote one of her former students who was talking about how when she was writing papers, Thomson was like this like super demanding, you know, about her notes and stuff. Whenever she thought that the student was, you know, was being unclear, not succinct, or, you know, should just put things differently, and like to the point that the student said that she was like super excited once when Judith Jarvis Thomson said that she liked one of her sentences, you know, like it was a big deal.
Wow. Or it could be like the situation, or one of my professors when I was getting my master's at the University of Houston, and and we were reading Kant, and there's the whole thing about the inquiring murderer, and not to get into all that, but he comes to a very counterintuitive.
We'll do a Philosophy Friday at it one day.
Yeah, he comes to a very counterintuitive conclusion, and my professor was like, well, you know, he was old and he probably was senile when he wrote this, but it's part of his work, so we still have to look at it. But yeah, probably senility brought this on, so maybe that's what happened in this case. I don't know.
Yeah, although I have always liked to think
Judith Jarvis Thomson, he wrote an obituary for Judith Jarvis Thomson.
Yeah, Jacobin. she died late last year. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I actually like that Kant Inquirer murder thing, because it always struck me as like the sort of early modern philosophy equivalent of somebody who gives a lecture and in the Q&A somebody asks something they're really not prepared for and they have to sort of improvise and it doesn't go well.
But this man had time to write it down. It wasn't like he was put on the spot.
Sure. Although, I guess the one that's even better is the Descartes Princess Elizabeth thing, where she asks him hard questions about how mind and body interact, and he basically says, "Don't worry about it.
Don't worry your pretty little head over."
Yeah, it is not too far from that.
Ben tells me that all the time. Not that exact, but he's like, "Don't worry about it." Ask him a question. Don't worry about it. Ben, what are you doing in the kitchen at 4 a.m? Don't worry about it.
Kitchen at 4 a.m.
Yeah, and they're sneaking cookies and whatnot. So she tells this story.
Yeah.
And provides this example of
yeah, so it's somebody.
Yeah, I was gonna tell it.
Oh, go nuts. Sorry.
So these two people are out. So let's say Ben and I are out and we're having a conversation about a delicate topic, and someone is sitting, let's say, in the booth behind us, and isn't leaning back over the booth. I do that sometimes. I'll be like, "Shh, man, I'm trying to hear what these people are saying," because if you're discussing it in public, you're discussing it in public. I was like, if we were planning a murder, we would not discuss it in the booth at the Flapjack Shack. So if you're discussing things in the booth at the Flapjack Shack,
Anyway.
So we're discussing this murder that we're planning at the Flapjack Shack, and somebody's sitting behind us, and they just happen to hear us. They weren't there to they weren't there to eavesdrop. They weren't making an effort to overhear us. Like the other night, my mother-in-law was talking to my brother-in-law on the phone, and we were sitting on opposite couches, and I heard everything she said. I was doing my own work, right there. I wasn't like, "Oh, what are they saying?" But I could just hear it. So, I am really babbling here.
Yeah. So
this person hears what they're saying.
So to, I think, get at Thomson's point in the example, maybe they weren't. So they're not violating. The crucial thing is that in overhearing this information, they're not violating your rights in any way. They haven't set up a listening device at your table.
Right. It was like me sitting on the couch across from Kathy.
Yeah.
I was just
they're not even straining in some obnoxious way to hear what the person's saying. They just happen to overhear it.
I totally do that at restaurants, though.
But be forewarned if you sit at the table near her. You'll see me like looking embarrassed and Jen, So
I'll put my hand like this, so I like cup my ear without people knowing.
Yeah. But let's say that
somebody innocently overhears.
They innocently overhear, but then they think, "Ooh,
this is some juicy 411."
Right.
Juicy.
And say people would be very interested to hear this, because this is Jennifer Burgess, famed for her Philosophy Friday appearances. And now I know this like really juicy thing about her.
What's interesting is that two can keep a secret if one of them is dead.
It's a Pierce's song.
Also, words to live by,
And so Thomson, she gives some examples of things that you can't, that you have a privacy right against, and says, people seeing your body when you don't want them to see it. Somebody painting your elbow, was it blue? Green. Okay, painting your elbow green. But she says, would your privacy rights be violated in this case, where somebody happens to come upon some information, but they do it in a way that doesn't violate any of your rights, but then they spread it around even though they know that you'd rather people not know this. And because she's got this slightly unclear, at least to us, account of privacy rights, but that in some way sort of links it up to property rights or some very property-like cluster of rights. Then she thinks that this wouldn't violate any privacy rights. That you can't be that the person who's sort of in some pristine way comes by this piece of information and then spreads it around isn't violating your property rights. And Rachel's isn't so sure. Rachel's thinks that no, maybe this is violating your privacy.
It is. Yeah. Maybe it is.
Yeah. Because on his account, that makes sense. Because if the reason that we care about privacy is that we value being able to have different kinds of relationships with different kinds of people, because not everybody has all the same information about us, and we need to have some control over which information which people have, what different people observe, etc., in order to maintain those different kinds of relationships. Because of he has another good example which we didn't talk about, which is about like doctor-patient stuff, and he gives the specific example of like mental health, like therapy and stuff, and he says that obviously people would tell their psychiatrists things that they're not just going to be telling like casual acquaintances.
Except for me, I would.
Sure. But, everybody else would tell their psychiatrist things that they wouldn't tell their casual acquaintances. And that I think, since again, this is in the 70s, I think group therapy was a pretty recent concept. And so he used the example about group therapy, where oftentimes when it was sort of being introduced, people would really resist it. What, I'm going to tell all these people? These
strangers?
all this stuff. And he says that what sort of overcame that was starting to think of them as somebody who had a special status because they had a particular relationship with you because they were part of the group.
Mm-hmm. And then once you came to realize that you were okay telling them all these private things about yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think AA would probably be, the same kind of dynamic that there are. Even though not everybody at the AA meeting is your best friend, you're willing to tell you're willing to tell all these stories about what you did while you were drinking to people at the AA group, that that you're not going to you're not just going to drop those stories over the by the water cooler at work. And so because he thinks that that's why that's like why it's a little unclear to me, actually. So whether I think Rachel's is presenting it as if this were like the main reason, but I don't think he needs to say that. I think it's at least a big reason why we value privacy. But because of that, I think that he kind of has the conceptual resources to explain why it is that we would consider that to be an invasion of privacy. If somebody innocently happens to come upon some piece of information about you that you would rather not have other people know, and then you just start wildly spreading it around and gossiping about it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Thought you could say anything at AA.
Nope, not his karaoke story. It's that explosive that if you told your karaoke story, everybody at AA would be like, "Whoa." Yeah, you worked through your steps with some other group, buddy. Yeah. So, I guess one question. Do you remember who wrote that other paper?
Some undergrad.
Okay. Well, anyway, some paper we just happened to see online, which was responding to.
I hope it was an undergrad. It was high quality for an undergrad.
Yeah. It would have been.
I'm not trying to insult her. For an undergrad, it was high quality.
Yeah. I think it was anyway. But this paper, the person was arguing at the end that Rachel's seemed like her main claim was that what Rachel's is saying might apply to the society in which he was in 1975, but look how much less privacy everybody has right now, and it's still fine. We can still maintain all sorts of relationships with all sorts of people at this, considerably reduced level of privacy.
And you could take that out as far as you want. If everything was open to everybody, there would still, she says, Rachel seems to be saying that if everything was open, there wouldn't be this differentiation of types of relationships. And she says, well, there are a lot of other things that go into what makes one relationship different from another. And it's not just the kind of stuff that Rachel's is talking about. So we would still have these different relationships.
Yes, there wasn't a lot of detail in that part of the argument.
There wasn't, but I mean, like if everybody knew everything, the fact that I kiss you
right
makes our relationship different
than your relationship with the mailman.
Exactly.
Right.
Or with anybody else.
Sure. So yeah. All right. So that's a good, so that seems like a fair point. I'm wondering how much damage that does to Rachel's core argument, especially because even though undeniably we do have less privacy to some extent from each other, and certainly less privacy from several big corporations that have incredibly detailed records of internet searches and
part of that is our choice. How much of ourselves do we want to put out there? Some people put every single moment of their lives on social media, and some people don't really put a lot of stuff.
Yeah. The part about the level of privacy we have with each other is much more of a matter of choice than the level of privacy that you have from Google. That
you can still
you can choose to a certain extent, although I think that it does get down to that issue. Like I remember G.A. Cohen pointing out that if we're thinking about what counts as a free choice, not for determinism and free will sorts of arguments, but for you have a right to make a free choice kinds of arguments. Cohen says it can't literally just mean that we're stopped in advance from doing something, because that's so rarely the kind of thing that we're talking about when we say free choice. What we mean is that you have a reasonable alternative to do it. Like if somebody points a gun at you and says, open up the safe or I'll kill you, they're not literally forcing, there's a sense in which they're not literally forcing you to open the safe, because you can just say nope, and then they shoot you, and
you could.
Yeah, exactly, you could.
You could.
But what that tone of voice indicates, when you say you could,
if you were a total dummy, you could.
Yeah, and that's Cohen's point. That he says what we really mean in most contexts when we say that somebody is forced to do something is that they weren't given any reasonable options. So yeah, you could not open the safe and be shot, right? But that doesn't seem like something that counts as having a free choice in the sense that we're normally interested in. That seems like something that would normally count as being forced to, or whatever. Even if you're living in a really authoritarian society, you might be able to make your political statement or whatever, you'd be hauled off to prison the next day, but you'd be able to do it. So you might think that, especially if you think that force and choice are the kinds of things that aren't just binary, like a light switch, that it's a spectrum, that you might think that you have that for some of the corporate stuff that, okay, there's a sense in which you have a choice, but you might question how reasonable that is. Like, you could just not own a cell phone, and then, like, you wouldn't have Verizon or whatever having all this information about your location and who you.
You could only just leave it at home.
Sure.
Or wherever you went that you didn't want to be tracked, leave it at home. If you don't want it to be known by anybody that you've searched for a specific thing on Google, go to the library and look at an encyclopedia. If you don't want Amazon to know what books you're reading, go to a bookstore and pay cash. There are ways, which is not unreasonable, to go to a bookstore and pay cash. No, I'm just saying
there are workarounds for some of these, although in some cases, if like sometimes that itself could be like suspicious. There's like, oh, I noticed you left your phone at home. That, I mean, I think in China, like a way that like often the tip off for for people who are looking at stuff that they're not supposed to be looking about online is they're just using like protected, like searches, like VPNs and stuff a lot. But yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying, here
there are different degrees of of inconvenience that you could put yourself to.
It just depends on what's important to you.
Sure. So you could say, like, you could ask. So you could question. I mean, this is all a little bit of a tangent, but you could question whether that's what degree of inconvenience it's reasonable to ask people to go to in order to not have a certain piece of information shared with some other entity. And that's, I think, where you could start to raise more privacy worries about that. With the interpersonal stuff, I mean, that is much more under your control, although not completely. There's also somebody else, takes a picture and you're in the background and they put it on social media and, you didn't do anything. Maybe you didn't even know that it was being taken, but suddenly now, and that's even an example where they're not being malicious, you're just in the background, it's still not entirely under your control.
No, of course it's not going to be entirely under your control, and maybe not even largely under your control. Yeah. But there are some things, like I said, some people choose to have things out there more than others. And if you're using these certain corporations, you're kind of implicitly agreeing.
Yeah, right. And so again, I think you could raise questions about how much is too much for, like, say, an implicit agreement, especially when you have, especially when not using some of this stuff would would be like a real, like, especially when it gets to the level of, like, not having a phone or, just not using it for certain things that we all normally use it for and stuff.
Then you start to look psycho.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's, because if everything's set up for you to use certain things, well, okay, you have the choice of not using it, but that choice starts to, use a technical philosophical term, that choice starts to feel a little bit less choicey as
makes you look psycho,
as the inconvenience rises to the point where you look like a psycho for not doing it.
But then again, it's just a weighing of what is important to you. Do I mind looking like a psycho, or is it more important that I maintain this level of privacy?
Fair enough. So, but again, as the meme asks, why not? But hold on, why not neither? Right? It's the opposite of the why not both meme. Why not neither? Both? Why not neither? That, like, maybe you shouldn't have to either look like a psycho or give up all this information. Maybe you should have a third. We should structure things such that you have a third option to yes, authenticity or psychoness. So I did not read that. But I would also point out, just in response, I guess the 2 points that I would make in response to the argument in that paper, the one responded to Rachel's, that, okay, yeah, we certainly have a reduced level of privacy compared to 1975, no doubt about that. But it's not like it's reduced to zero. I mean, we have like we still have a lot of control, especially interpersonally, like a little bit less with Verizon and Google, but especially, with other people we're likely to interact with, we still do have quite a bit of control over which information is shared with who, even if it's not quite as easy.
Unless you get hold of some truth serum.
As it used to be. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say so. I don't think you should be able to record people if they don't know they're being recorded. But yeah,
our students are even supposed to tell us if they're recording our class,
and
which is already public.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But also that seems nice that, like I've never said no, but I've always appreciated being asked.
Yeah, I just always thought it was weird. Like,
yeah. No, I get it, because it's like it's in public, so of course. But
yeah, it's already a public thing.
Yeah, but still, there's something nice about, like, if you're going to be recorded, being informed at least, that you're being recorded. But yeah, and there are states where that's not the law, that that you can have, you can't just like record the phone conversation when neither person knows they're being recorded or whatever. But like I can call you on the phone and record it without telling you.
This is the thing. If you're going to have a sensitive conversation, don't write anything down. Don't put anything in a text message. Don't call on the phone. Pat the person down when you meet in public.
And now we're back to psychoness.
Well, it depends. If you're in the mafia, is it psycho or is it just common sense?
I don't know. I remember that was a plot point in the Sopranos when Tony.
Of course it was.
When Tony and Polly and Silvio suspect Big Pussy of being a FBI informer. And there's a point where Polly, under some thin pretense, is trying to pat him down, and he leaves town because he's like, okay, the second that happened, I knew that you guys thought I was around, and I had to leave.
There's not a Simpsons for this.
There might be.
There's a Simpsons for everything.
There's certainly
That's
Sopranos.
What I've been taught.
There's certainly a Sopranos for it. Yeah. So that's one thing. I think that most of what Rachel said in 1975, at least interpersonally, is still true now. And I think that she is probably right that it would be possible, like if Rachel's is trying to suggest that it would literally be impossible to have different kinds of relationships with different people, with no privacy whatsoever, everybody having all the same information, everybody get into, I don't know, we had some version of Google Earth that was also indoors, so everybody could, it's like, oh, what's going on? And, what's going on in the bathroom at 714 Evergreen Terrace tonight? That even in that kind of nightmarish society, that we would still have different relationships with different people. I think she's right about that. But also,
as long as we had different feelings towards different people, I think we would automatically have different relationships with them.
But yeah, I think it's also but that said, I don't know how important that is for Rachel's point, because at least as I read it, his big point isn't necessarily that we wouldn't have relationships that would be different, but that there are different kinds of that there are maybe specific kinds of relationships that we value that are partially constituted by what information we share, and that we couldn't have maybe those like that there are certain kinds of friendship maybe that like we couldn't have if there was no such thing as telling somebody something in confidence.
Yeah.
And that seems plausible, or at the very least that the relationships would be different, and we value them. Wow. See if I can get through the sentence. We value having them be the way that they are.
Yeah. I think that's right. There is something about telling someone something like if I were to tell Ben something that I know I'm not going to tell, my friends or family or whatever, there is something enhancing about the relationship just in the telling of it.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, unless anybody has any last minute questions, I think that might be about it for that. Yeah, Jen, why don't you do any mafia movie reviews?
I don't like the crowd calls.
Okay. Fair enough. The Circle isn't the one we watched, right? That was just
Circle.
Circle. Okay. Yeah.
Circle, a good movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie to show ethics classes.
Yeah, my friend Aiden recommended it to me, and it is a really good ethics movie.
Yeah, it's sort of science fiction, but it's somewhat trolley problem-esque.
Don't give away too much. I am real big about.
I don't think that gave away. I don't think that gave anything.
I don't want to know anything about anything except who's in it, so I can make sure that they're attractive.
Oh my god!
And other than that, I don't care.
Yeah. All right.
You love me.
I do.
You do.
I do.
You do.
All right. Well, I guess that probably wraps us up for now.
We'll be back next Friday.
Yeah, we will be back next Friday. You want to do the philosophy of language one then?
If not, why not?
All right.
That's a saying of my dad's. If not, why not?
Can do it in the accent.
If not, why not?
There we go.
I like old Ben.
Yep. That's a quote. So
my dad's full of quotes, most of which are not appropriate to share here. Or in an AA meeting. Or really anywhere else.
Okay, that's probably enough of.
Hi, Thomas.
Don't have to embarrass Thomas in the privacy stream. So
oh yeah, am I violating his privacy?
A little bit. A little bit. All right. Yep. So yeah, we'll do Bertrand Russell's Philosophy of Language next week. Meanwhile, on Sunday,
it's plug time.
Yeah, it's plug time. Yep, plugs for everybody.
Just for you.
Well, you can plug anything you want.
I don't have anything to plug.
Yeah. So on Sunday, we are going to be completing the quadrilogy and finishing up the Zizek Peterson debate.
Man, how long is that taking?
It ended up being 4 parts. The Sunday
hours and hours.
Sunday is going to be number 4, but they're like 20 minutes.
No, I get what quad means.
Yeah, quad,
4.
Yeah, so trill is 3, quad is 4. Yeah, no, it ended up
it wasn't so much the parts, it was the many hours.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson says a lot of stuff that's wrong, so it takes a while to go through it all. But so that's coming up on Sunday for the next regular episode. On Monday, our good friend Ben Udashin is coming on to go through with me a Huckabee publication called The Kid's Guide to Fighting Socialism.
I saw that. I was like, what is this? So I'm going to talk about that.
Why did Ben order this?
Why do we have this? First of all, we have no kids. And second of all, if we did, this is not the sort of thing we would be teaching them.
Yeah, it's kind of the opposite. But yeah, so gonna be going through that with other Ben on Monday.
Ben
should be a fun. Yes, I'm Ben. He's another Ben. Yeah, it's much nicer than there's a Ben in that we knew in grad school. I was called secondary Ben.
He loved it.
I'm sure he did.
Your primary Ben. Your number one Ben.
So yeah, that's gonna be a really fun episode on Monday. Next Wednesday, not quite sure what movie we're going to talk about, but Luke Savage from Jacobin is going to be joining us to talk about it.
Wait, what happened to A Bug's Life?
Yeah, tell me when you want to do that. We'll put it on the books. So, and then on Friday, Philosophy Friday, Russell's philosophy of language, and on the following Sunday, Adnan Hussein and Jean Bajalan are going to be joining me for to start a new debate breakdown, because we will finally, I swear it, be done with Zizek Peterson.
How far into the future are you going here?
That far.
Okay.
That's the last thing. It's I could go one day more, but I'm just gonna go.
Please do.
So yeah, we're gonna be going over. It's Edward Said and Christopher Hitchens debating a couple of neoconservative ghouls about the Middle East from back when Hitchens was good, and then the next day we are going to be doing we're going to do a little philosophy in the main show. Again, it's going to be a thing about abortion rights. So lots of stuff to look forward to.
And then the following Friday we'll be back.
Yeah,
with something or other.
Maybe we'll do the Inquirer Murder then.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, it's very possible.
Very possible. All right,
you
guys.
have to tune in to find out.
Exactly. All right. See you all for all of that. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Left is best.
Team Snoopy forever.